Low-stakes feedback can be described as assessment data that students receive that has little or no connection to a final grade. The assessment feedback itself can provide a student specific information as to where they are in their progress towards achieving a goal. That type of assessment can also provide the teacher with the opportunity to give students what I like to call feed forward. Feedback is kind of information on how you've done, but of greater interest is giving feed forward. How can I give you information that will positively impact your next attempt and future performance? I frequently describe that the purpose of teacher behaviors is to generate student behaviors. So as a teacher, I think to look at what is the impact that my feedback is having is critical. Laura Reynolds, the author of a book entitled Giving Students Feedback, 20 Ways to Do It Right, she describes two purposes for feedback that ring true for me. The first one is to improve student learning. The second one is to provide students with an I can do this attitude. My guess is that second one most often occurs first before we get to the increase in student learning. So I think that's a great way for teachers to judge the effectiveness that their feedback strategies are having. When a student completes an assessment, the student can identify where they are on the continuum of my original skill set and my outcome learning skill set. A recent study that I read that looked at the top strategies for students in study skills, the number one strategy that gave students the biggest impact was studying with practice test. It appears that when students take a practice test and identify that they know the material, it actually causes the knowledge of knowing to sink in deeper. In other words, I really know now that I know it because I got it right in the assessment. The second reason that the strategy is so powerful is that students who study using practice test can begin to separate what I know from what I still need to learn, so that their future study time is has a higher return by spending it focused on the things I've yet to learn, rather than continually studying and reviewing everything. Again, the assessment data provides the teacher with specific knowledge of what instruction, what direction to provide the student, so that the student is aware of the specific steps, practices, ways to spend my time that are most likely to lead to an improvement on my next assessment. The research on professional development, teacher learning, for going back at least 30 years, has identified that without receiving coaching feedback, the chances of teachers internalizing new practices at a level that has positive impact on student achievement is tremendously reduced. So most of us need a form of feedback that allows us to identify whether or not we are changing our practices in the way that we have set out to change them. I frequently use the term for that of conscious practice. So knowing that I'm receiving feedback generally increases the odds of me staying with something consciously long enough to cause it to be internalized. In a study that was released entitled Effective Instructional Time Use for Leaders, they identified that while informal observations and walk-through data collection activities that did not provide feedback to the teacher tended not to have a impact on student achievement, and in some cases had a negative impact on staff. However, time spent directly in coaching activities where teachers were receiving both feedback and what I would describe again as feed forward. Okay, here's what's happening, and here is the step, the strategy, the practice to assist the teacher in moving to that next step, did have a positive impact on learning and on school achievement. Now, I would add that I can see value in the walkthroughs that don't initially provide feedback to the teacher. If the data and the observations and the discoveries that administrators and coaches gained from that walkthrough practice led to professional development and coaching structures for teachers. In other words, similar to a teacher giving a test and identifying where students' misconceptions lie, and the teacher using that information to provide the next instructional component. The same way the administrator and the coach, looking at that walkthrough data that they collected, provides what's the next change in leadership behavior that will assist and promote the necessary change in teacher behavior.